Okay, we're working on a 2015 Ford Escape 1.6 liter. It's a 4-cylinder EcoBoost, front wheel drive only. What happened is on the tire, on the back tires, both rear suspensions are messed up. We've already turned these tires around one time on the rim to get mileage out of it. What happens is this tire is riding with a negative camber, with the top of the tire tilted in, which you see on sports cars on purpose, but in this case it shouldn't be that much. It's supposed to be 1.38 degrees to 1.5. This one was probably running close to 3. It was tilting in at the top. There's no adjustment for that. So we started replacing the upper top control arm there, that black one, and the one below that, that link, forward and trailing link. There are other components like this front part here that seems to be all right, and the hub and brakes and all that are good. But in order to replace those components, we had to take it down to where we're at right now. Problem is this bolt right here that holds this into this arm on snapped when we were trying to torque it down. That creates a huge problem. So this is the set that we replaced. This is for the right side, but we put those in here. And like I said, that bolt broke off. So we have to take this whole knuckle off. We'll have a new one coming. That involves removing the brake caliper assembly and the rotor, which slides off after that. And then the bearing hub, which that rotor sits on. Those bolts are on the back side down in here. This you can see it 7 on there. Okay, this end is a 7 millimeter. It's just like an Allen wrench, except it's a bit for a little 1/4-inch drive socket setup. In here like this, and we're going to take these out, and they're not very tight. Take these caliper pins out, and it will separate the brakes, outer shoe segment from the inner, and bottom brake caliper pins. I'll make sure it's all the way in. Okay, so taking the 2 caliper pins out. Let's see it. This pin will have to be cleaned and lubed before we put it back in.
The tool is what I'm trying to...
Take this top one out the rest of the way, and we're going to use this baling wire over here to make a caliper hanger to hang this thing up so that these brake lines aren't being stressed by any weight or anything like that. First, I'm going to pull this up off. It can be a little tight, especially if the brakes are set, but they're not. So it should come off. Just have to give it a little bit of a tug. There shouldn't be anything else holding it. Well, maybe, yeah, that's pretty tight. That's probably what it is. Alright, so we're going to pull this loose. Alright, because this bolt down here is broken, we're going to have to kind of wiggle it out. Put a little bit of pressure on the bar because it's broken. There we go. Grab that bolt. So there's a broken bolt, and we're going to take this hub off now, or after we get this brakes off. Now that the brake line thing is loose, we can pull this off, and hang it up somewhere up here. There'll be some place to use this baling wire. We'll get that done. Also taking the bottom bolt out from the other link because we're going to have to match up and get a new one. It's the same exact bolt. Grab it with the pliers or something. So we're able to break this loose. Okay, the brake pads come out. They're still in pretty good shape. They got a few miles left on them. And we're just going to put those back in. So now we need to hang this up here and out of the way with some baling wire so we can work on taking the rest of this apart. We're going to do that right now. Well, it's just a side note. After inspecting the pads, also look at the rest of the caliper and make sure the rubber's not cracked, if there's any fluid leaking out, any issues with that. This one looks okay. We're gonna use they make a special tool to push this back in. We're just gonna use a C-clamp. We'll show you that when we get to that point later. And right now we are gonna hang this up out of the way. Just trying to keep that in frame. So we're going to use this baling wire here to hang this up and out of the way. So we can work on this just like that. It ain't going nowhere. And this stuff is loose. It's plenty out of the way. Well, actually, we're going to need to twist this around here a little bit. So we're tightening it up, twist it up a little bit. So that bolt on the top for the caliper, and this other one down here on the bottom right there, right here, it's 13 millimeter. So we're just going to need a regular socket to take that off. I'm going to have my son get in here and do that. Take those two bolts off down in there and pull that bracket off. And the top one is out. And now he's working on getting that bottom one out. You have to hold that bracket. You have to kind of hold it because it's going to want to turn. And off, the bracket comes off. That is the caliper bracket. Now you can pull that whole disc straight off. Just the disc, not the shield behind it. You may have to let's get a hammer and tap on it. It's probably just stuck. Before you store this, put your bolts in it so you know where they go. So the rotor's stuck on there. A little rust around the hub here where it goes on. And we're going to get a big rubber mallet that we have in the other tool shed and hit it from back here while we're turning this to get it off. Once the rotor and the backing plate and the hub or the backing plate are off, we have to get up underneath there. It's really hard to see from here, but there's 4 E14 Allen type. E14, it's like a Torx, but it's a male head Torx on here. Instead of the tool being a male Torx sticking out, we'll show you a picture of it. That's kind of going to be fun to get to. We'll have to raise it up to get up underneath there. Okay, so we're going to turn. All right, turn it a little bit, about a quarter turn. Turn it again. Turn it again. Turn it again. Keep turning it. I do believe it's coming off. Keep going, keep going, keep going. There it is. Okay, pull it off. Wiggle back and forth, not that way. Not turn it, wiggle it. Yes, there you go. Okay. So this is it. To take that hub screws off from the back side. This is what's called an E14. It is a female Torx, basically. Up underneath here are, first of all, there's a wire, probably a speed sensor or whatever, that plugs into the back of that bearing hub assembly. We have to unplug that wire. We're not taking the thing off, but that bolt behind it, that one down there, and the other two, which are hiding back there on the bottom left and in the upper right hand corner. Yeah, if I can see it from here, but they're there. We got to get them off. Well, this is the factory service manual that I printed out. It's like 1,000 pages long. I have it on PDF file, so I was able to just print the ones I need. This shows the 2 bolts that you're supposed to remove and discard and replace with new ones. That's for the caliper bracket. There it is right there. If the bolts are good, you can reuse them. Just don't over torque them, because if they snap, you're gonna be fucked. Now we're at the point here. We already got that off. That we are going to. This is what I'm talking about here. This is the back side of the wheel hub. You'll see the connector that I showed you, and the 4 E14 male Torx head bolts. Take those out, and the hub comes right out of the front of this and come right off. And that exposes the knuckle assembly underneath that we need to get off last to replace. So you just have to get the right size extension to get in on these, and then you can break them loose, hopefully, without too much work. It doesn't want to come down. They're pretty torqued on there pretty good, obviously. We might need a breaker bar for that. This is too short. So we're putting this pipe on the end of this for some extra leverage just to break this loose, because they're on there pretty tight. After we remove all 4 of those E14 bolts, that hub will come out. We'll be able to disconnect that wire. Be careful with that wire there.
It's not out yet.
So this is the first E14 bolt that we got out from the back side of that hub, and my son's going to take the other 3 out, and you don't need to see all that. I'm going to break this stabilizer joint loose here. That has to come off because it's part of this whole knuckle assembly. After that, this bolt down there on that mount, bottom arm, control arm mount, that connects to the shock, that'll come off. And then the shock bolt here has to come off. And then this whole hub assembly, well, we still got more to take off. We have to disconnect it up here too, but we're heading that way. We had to put about 5mm wrench in the tip of this little joint here to keep it from turning, and then we're going to use a 15mm box wrench to get that nut off, because the nut was turning the whole shaft, so that's not going to work. We may have to loosen this top part up here, but I don't think we will. We'll find out after we get that off. Alright, so the last one, we got 3 of them out. The last one's right there. We were able to come in from underneath here through that space, and we're going to pull that.
Damn.
So once it's cracked loose, this back plate turns. So come here, Lance. So I'm turning this like this and working this thing off. It's not quite there yet, but a little bit of time. Turn this into the room where the slot is. tight fit. There he is. Okay, so not that close. So now we just need to push down on this tab, pull the wire off, and there is our wheel hub and bearing assembly, which is in good shape, so we're going to be reusing this. This bolt that's broke off in here, we may not be able to get it out. So I ordered this whole assembly. It comes with this front bar here too. It's $175 or something like that. It won't be here for 2 days, but once we get this off, if we can get that bolt out, we could put this back together and send another one back. So there's really nothing wrong with it. Just need to get a new bolt and not over torque and snap it when we put it back in. Okay, so we got the nut off the trailing link, torsion bar link over there, and then I'm taking this last nut, or this bolt out of the very bottom main control arm. Alright, so we got the nut off the stabilizer link here, and the other nut on the other side there, which you can't see up in here, is loose but not out yet. There's 3 bolts. 3 bolts on this side that we're going to take out for now. We're going to leave this arm here on and just take out 1, 2, 3 bolts here to see if we can get this hub off. The problem we're having is getting to that shock bolt. And I had to use a pipe for leverage on the socket to break those nuts free. And those are 18 millimeter nuts on that end down there. 18 millimeter. I don't know if you can see that or not. I can't tell from here, but we'll show them from another. So these 3 bolts here, actually, once you break these 3, break them loose from the other side down there with the pipe and all that for extra leverage, you can get to them here, take them out the rest of the way from the top right here. When we take that bottom one off, this whole thing kind of gets pushed down, which is fine. It's now off of there. It slid down about 3 or 4 inches. It slid off of here. That's good. We just need to get this bolt off that shock and this thing out of there where that broken bolt is, and this hub will come off. Move your right hand. Okay, so we're ratcheting off this bolt. The last one, shock. Everything else down here is loose. This whole thing is loose, ready to come off. Just got to get that bottom shock bolt out. Alright, so this whole hub is loose, except for right here. That bolt, the snap bolt, sticks out about 1/4 inch, and it's keeping that in there. So we're going to probably have to take off. That one up there is not tight, but we're going to have to get that out. It requires a little bit of finesse to get that bolt out. Take the whole thing out, get it on the workbench, and then break it loose. So we're using an extension and a swivel. Get to go around that subframe thing to get that T60 bit onto that bolt. Alright, so we were able to get that off. And it's over here. And this is what we have to get off. So when the new one comes, and hopefully we can do it without ruining this bar. When you do this kind of work, it's always a good idea to put the bolts for safekeeping, just thread them into wherever they came out of, okay, so they don't get lost. Put the nut on. We're going to leave this till the part comes in. And then we're going to put it back together. We were able to get that bolt, that arm and the bolt out of this. You can see here. This is, by the way, this is not called the hub. This is the actual knuckle. Steering knuckle, they call it, even though there is no steering on the back of this vehicle. There's the broken bolt. So we have a new one that we're going to put in, and it comes with that forward plate there too. So we're going to be doing that next. Here's the new assembly. That's the whole knuckle assembly with the front forward, I guess it's some kind of stabilizing bar. That's this one up here. We're going to replace this one. I'll take that off and then put this one back on. Ford recommends that you throw away all these bolts. They're supposedly one-time use only bolts, the one that came out. So I did buy some replacements, not from Ford. They were way too expensive. This already has factory bolts in here. But this one, these control arm ones, these are 10.9 rated high tensile strength steel alloy bolts. And that might be why the one I tried to put back in snapped. That's a possibility. So it's worth the extra 40 bucks or whatever. And you don't have to get Ford bolts as long as they are the right thread pitch, diameter. You have enough thread, and the shank, you want to make sure that this shank on these do not touch the surface on something that's not exposed on the other side. This one, on some of these, the bolt holes are drilled all the way through, so the threads can come out. They did stick out a little bit originally. What you don't want is, once this thing's all the way in, this part of the shank, if it goes into that hole in here, it's going to snap. So that's part of the shank of that bolt is thicker, wider than the thread part. So on this thing, this is the one that broke before because there's no hole on this side. So I needed to make sure that when I thread this in all the way down in here, I got thread sticking out and it doesn't bottom out in here. It's not bottoming out, and so this should be good. I'll also put new bolts down on the inside of these upper and lower lateral arm mounts where they join in there. You can see where they stick out a little bit, just like the other ones did. But again, they're not going to thread so far in that the shank bottoms out and causes an issue when you're torquing it down. Yeah, tomorrow morning we're going to put this thing back together. Okay, so we're back here, and the bolts that hold the front of this arm, which is this arm here on the new one, there's two bolts. Okay. The bolts come in from the top up there. These are the new ones. These are 18 millimeter bolts. And these are everything on here is a 10.9 rated high tensile strength steel alloy bolts. All right, so we have to take this panel off here. We'll look at that. And the arm, and these cables got to come off here. We got to get this cable off there. And there's a brake cable that's bolted to this thing. You can see this little thing here. Take that off. Once the cable's off and that's off, the two bolts up there, this arm comes off, and put this whole new big one in here and put it back together. So this little bolt right here that holds this brake line, the brake line here, there's a little clamp that's held in with that. It's a 7 millimeter. Take that out, and this should come loose from the plate. And the wire is held in with this nylon thing. It just pops in and out of that hole. It should be pretty easy to just wiggle it out of there or push it through from this side. But let's see if we can get a picture of what it looks like here on the inside. Okay, there's the brake line where it's mounted. I don't know if that's going to work. We'll have to take a look at that. Do not lose that little screw. That's actually not a machine screw like all these other ones. It's going into a plastic fitting. This thing should come out. Okay, so you tap this little thing towards the back, and then the front of it pries out through the front like this. You got to get two hands on it, but you Just have to pry it out, pull it forward, and where's it at here? Yeah, it's trying. You gotta just wiggle it out. Alright, so I broke this brake line thing out. This is what it looks like. You just kind of put it back in there, backside in first. You'll figure it out once you see what it looks like. It's not that bad. Alright, then I was able to, from this hole here, I was able to just push this plastic connector out. They're not. I'll just have to kind of squeeze it back together, stick it in there. This goes into the hub. Comes out that hole for the hub. That's the brake. This is for the speed sensor and anti-lock brake, stuff like that. So just keep these out of the way. And now we got to get up underneath there and pull the front of that arm off. Alright, so we're up underneath the car. And in order to get this plate off here, we got to get these two, what do they say, 18 millimeter nuts out of there. We're going to have to pull this plastic cover off. And that's going to have a little connector in there, or a screw in there. And then another one down here at the front, I believe. In there. That's it. Just two of them. And then this plastic cover will come off and we can get to those bolts up in there. Okay, so these two 10 millimeter screws are what hold this plastic shield on. We take the one at the front end and the back end off. You can just pull it down like this to get in there and get those out. You don't have to take it completely off. We can just hold this down here like that. If you don't have a breaker bar that will fit up in there, just put a piece of pipe on here. This is about a 2-foot piece of pipe, steel pipe. That gives you enough leverage to break those loose without much effort. Because doing it just with this, not going to happen. Those bolts are torqued to like 81 or 84, 85 foot-pounds of torque, and that's quite a bit. All right, so I got that front arm out. The other one's connected to the new knuckle that we're putting on. So you get another set of hands out here. We're gonna bolt this up and start putting this thing back together. Okay, so I'll put this top lateral arm in just loosely. The bolt is not all the way in, just a couple threads just to hold it in place. So I can start to mount this thing up here and get it lined up. We'll put the bottom one in. It goes into that bolt down there. Right there. We're going to put that bottom link in here also. Just let it hang down loose. So, there we have the bottom one in. Make sure you have this in the right way. On the top one, the curve is towards the bottom. Okay? Like that. And on this one down here, the open side of this, see, one side is like this. The other side's kind of open, channel down the middle of that thing. That goes towards the back, according to the paperwork and how you took it off. Okay. There it is. This is a front view right here. Just put them on finger tight for now till we get everything up, and then we'll tighten everything down and torque everything down. All right, so I was able to, with the help of a jack stand, kind of position this thing up in here. I was able to get the bottom bolt started in there. So now we're going to just hook up these other links loosely and then start strapping it down from up in here. Tighten that down and all these one at a time. All right, so we got the top one, and make sure you put this brake line plate back over that and just start those threads. We're not going to crank them down until everything's tight. We got to get that shock. We have to push that shock up, lower this whole thing down, get that shock up in there. But first we're going to hook up the front. All right, then the front lateral bottom link over here, we want to get that hooked up. All right, this is going to be last. This sway arm link goes in here, and the shock will be the last two before we put the hub back on. All right, so I got that. I got the arm, the front arm here, up in place, and I got the top, these front, bottom, and top links in there. And all right, so this torsion bar, you need to, again, to tighten the nut and not have the whole stud turn, you need to put a, what does this say? 5mm Allen, metric Allen in there, and then use a 15mm box wrench to tighten that up. We got the shock bolt in, and all right, so this bracket, this brake line bracket's got two little hooks here that have to go over this lip before you clamp it down. So you have to get it over that. We have to pull that bolt out and redo it. Damn it. All right, so now that's those two little clips. You can see them in there. Right here and here. They're over the lip. See? So that's in the correct place. Now we can clamp this down. Everything's back together. Everything's torqued down. Now we're going to put this hub back on here. Okay? There's a little bit of rust around here. We're going to clean that up a little bit before we put it in. And this plug that you see, that goes towards the front of the car. That's how we took it off. And we're going to put this on, bolt it down, torque it down, and then plug that thing in and put the brakes back together. Okay, so we took a battery-powered disc with a wire brush, and we buffed off some of the rust, smoothed this out a little bit here. Then we treated it with some LPS2 just to kind of help corrosion resistance. Now we're going to bolt it back on. So, where's them bolts at? Is that the new ones?
Yes, those are the new ones.
All right.
Minus this one, obviously.
Here, hold this. So again, you're probably going to need a mallet and a hammer to tap this thing in. We want to take these. Actually, we can leave those on because you can tap on those a little bit. This should be a pretty tight fit. Oh, hold on, pause it. I'll just record this, okay. So we're going to clean this up with some LPS2 again, and a kind of rust inhibitor. It's going to get dirty anyway, dusty, but we want to clean the mating surfaces on both sides off so there's no chunks of dirt or rust or anything. This goes on. Okay, so up underneath here, we got the first two started. I think we can see those. I got the first two started. Now we're going to put the other two in. Okay, so once again, we're underneath here, we're in the back, and we are putting these four E14 bolts back in the back of the hub. You can't see them all here, but you got to get to them. Just tighten them down. All right, so we got all four of the hub bolts in there, torqued down. Supposed to be 80 foot-pounds. We're close enough. It's probably 60 plus, and I don't want to over-torque them. We're gonna check these, make sure that re-torque them again later after we've had a chance to drive. And now we got to put the brake caliper bracket back on. So we're gonna do that now. Also, we're cleaning the rust off with this buffing. Not really a buffing wheel. It's a steel. It's a wire brush that you can spin. So you can shine it up, get most of the rust off. We're going to do the same thing on the back of this inside this drum here before we actually put it up on there. There's quite a bit of rust in there, so we want to clean that out if we can. All right, so using that powered wire brush, we cleaned significant amount of rust out there. We're just gonna put a little bit of lubricant on there. We don't want it on the drum. I mean, it'll burn off, but not on the disc itself. Just in here a little bit. Protect that. Now we're gonna put that on. Slide it on there.
Goes on like that?
Nope.
Oh. Okay.
Just like that. All right, and we'll need a rubber mallet. Tap that on all the way. Go get that rubber mallet.
Right next to it.
We don't need the rubber mallet on this one. We can use the regular hammer just to don't hit the studs, just around it. Make sure it's seated. Oops, try not to hit the studs. Okay. If it looks like it's
pretty crooked.
But when you clamp it down, it'll go straight. But get this all the way down. Yeah, much better. Okay. All right. So now we want to put on the grab the caliper bracket. Let's get that. Let's put that on over here. You can put it on. Take the bolts out. We're using these. We're going to reuse these. We're going to put some Loctite on these. All right. We're going to use the wire brush to buff this here and the mating surface on the back side of that before we put this on. All right. So after the caliper bracket is on and torqued down to 41, what was it?
40.
Yeah, 40 foot-pounds, 41. We turn this, make sure nothing's dragging. That's good. Now we're going to use this C-clamp here to compress the caliper piston just enough to get these other brake pads on. If we were putting new brake pads on, we'd have to compress this all the way down. But we're not. We only have to go a little bit just to slip these other shoes on, other pads on, because we're not going to do the brakes right now. They still got a few miles left on them. All right, so we put the brakes back on. When you push those calipers in, they're not supposed to really push in. They're supposed to turn. They screw in. So you have to kind of be careful. You don't chew those up. Anyway, we didn't have to move it much, and it did. When I pushed in on it, it turned and went in. And we opened up the bleeder valve back here, on the back here, right there. Where's it at? There's the bleeder valve. We opened up the bleeder valve while we pushed in, so we didn't pressurize the system in reverse. Squirted some fluid out. Is there any air? It's out. We'll put that back on there. We grease the pins. Put these pins back in, the 7mm, just like the opposite of how we took it out. We tested it. It spins good. The parking brake works. When we step on the brake, it locks it. So we're going to put the wheel on and go test drive it because it should be done. Okay, and that's it. Put the tire on, and now we're going to go test drive it. Hopefully the wheel doesn't fall off. No, it won't. There's a licensed airframe and power plant mechanic from the 80s. I kind of know what I'm doing, even though it's a car, not an airplane. The theories are the same with torque and things like that. So, and I have worked on a lot of cars anyway, most of my own.